Yes, we're doing it. Proof that, yes, we really do read the comments, I promise. We're doing Galaxy Quest this week. It is the final Star Trek film of the 20th century because, I mean, this is a Star Trek film. In fact, it was voted one of the best Star Trek films of all time at Las Vegas 2013. So, I mean, it is a Star Trek film. It also, everything about the ethos and making of this film went into making that was both satirizing but also honoring. A lot of went on with both Star Trek as a franchise, but also in the wider community around it. There is a reason, I'm sure you know, why it is probably one of our most requested ups and downs that's ever happened. So yeah, there was never any question as to whether we were doing Galaxy Quest or not. The only question from our point of view was, when do we do it? So we decided that as Star Trek Insurrection, which of course we finished last week, came out in 1998, and Galaxy Quest came out in 1999, this would be the perfect time to cover this wonderful, wonderful film. Written by David Howard and Robert Gordon and directed by Dean Parasot, the main ethos behind making this film, according to Parasot, was that they set out to make the best Star Trek episode that they possibly could. Did they manage it? Let's dive in to all of the ups and downs from Galaxy Quest. Our first up of the week, sort of continuing a bit of a trend here on the retro ups and downs, is going to the score. David Newman composed such a hummable theme for Galaxy Quest that, I mean, so, you know, obviously you rewatch these films in advance of doing the ups and downs for them, right? And so for days upon days, the theme to Galaxy Quest has been playing in my head. And I don't hate it. I do not hate it at all. We were having a talk about this. This whole ups and downs is going to be temporal observations. There's just so many things along the way that rather than go through one by one the ups and downs and then at the end coming to a temporal observations, treat this retro ups and downs as a temporal observations. Cue the dolphins. And we first hear this wonderful theme tune in Taken Up, that retro opening that we get. So it's obviously, we're watching an episode of Galaxy Quest in that opening, and it's very, very like what Black Mirror would later do with the first USS Callister episode, which to me and Chris feels like there is no way that that wasn't deliberate, you know what I mean? Like it just does what Galaxy Quest does. You know, we're watching the cast play those parts in, you know, grimy different aspect format as well, footage, which then widens out for the reveal that it's an episode being shown at a convention. It sets up everything so nicely. It also shows, oh, there's a kid on the bridge. Will Wheaton, who has been interviewed in, you know, in response to Galaxy Quest, will say, like, you know, he would have loved to have been cast in a potential Galaxy Quest TV series, which I'll probably mention a couple of times as we go, as someone shouting, why was there a kid on the bridge? Because Wesley Crusher, you're looking well, as Tommy Webber playing Lieutenant Laredo, who is piloting the NSEA Protector. I love that. Will Wheaton, of all people, going, why is there a kid? Obviously lampooning all of the questions he got the whole time about flying the Enterprise. The design of the bridge of this OG Protector, I mean, it's the Enterprise. Although it's not the Enterprise, and I will come back to that. But you've got your big captain's chair in the middle, you've got your first officer's chair just to the side of it, pilot's chair, the whole thing is circular so that we can see everything. It's just, it works, I love it. The whole thing is an up from me, this whole scene. The reveal that we're watching an episode as well as, obviously, taken up to Sam Rockwell. I'm going to talk about him a lot, don't worry. As the MC, Guy Fleegman, guiding us through this episode, as the aspect ratio changes to let us in on the joke, it is directly referencing all those, because it is the Lost episode as well, the one that introduced Omega 13. You with me? You still with me? Everyone who, by the way, who hasn't seen Galaxy Quest, go watch Galaxy Quest. if you have seen Galaxy Quest, possibly rewatch Galaxy Quest. I mean, there's a lot in here considering it's a standalone story. However, he's introducing this lost episode that is screened at conventions. That is directly referencing Gene Roddenberry screening The Cage at conventions before it aired on television. The wider audience would have seen The Cage chopped up and put back into the two-part episode, The Menagerie, you know, the episode of Star Trek that is just Gogglebox. Well, that's what they're doing here, is he's showing off this lost episode only at conventions and only for convention attendees. And you know what? Now that I've said the word convention enough times, taken up to how the convention is depicted in this film. Now, don't get me wrong, conventions were not new in 1999. I'm not saying that Galaxy Quest predicted conventions or anything of the sort. What I'm saying is that it nails what conventions might look like, how they might seem. You have everyone there in your costume. Is that a Discovery Klingon there? Or did somebody watch Galaxy Quest before designing their Discovery Klingons? Everyone there attending in costume, the passion is there, signs up on the wall, different societies being called out everywhere. The conventions that I've been to, this felt like I was looking through a window at one, and I thought they absolutely nailed it. I do apologize to any current mullet bearers. I bear you no ill will, but Taggart's mullet in that retro episode, let's just say I wouldn't be reviewing it for renewing it even. I probably would be reviewing it, but I wouldn't be renewing it for another season if he kept the mullet. I will say Taggart's look improves as the film goes on. Let's start talking cast. As I say, I've already mentioned Sam Rockwell, but he is just fabulous in this film. Very nearly didn't do the film, was convinced to take on the part by his friend Kevin Spacey. Is a statement that's aged well, but thank God he was convinced to do this film, because he is so good as Guy, or as crew member number 6 in this film. He just perfectly nails the eager earnestness of someone who wasn't main cast, but certainly has main cast energy, but is a bit like a golden retriever or something in this film, in how he just wants to be a part of the fun and he wants to help. And you know, he possibly doesn't expect some of the scenarios that arrive. To be fair, how could anyone expect them, really? He shows extreme skill vamping at the microphone, which is something I haven't had to do very often, but when I have had to do it, I really appreciate the people who have skill for that. I'm not going to lie. The character of Guy Fleegman was named in honor of Guy Vardaman, who basically played a ton of background characters in Star Trek as well. So, listen, like I said, this is a Star Trek episode as much as it is something else. Sigourney Weaver is fabulous in this film. She plays Gwen DeMarco, who played Lieutenant Weaver. This is Ellen Ripley. Let's be real. So initially, there was a plan that they didn't want to cast any well-known actors who had worked in sci-fi before. Originally, Harold Ramis of Ghostbusters fame was set to direct this film. It was, at that stage, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit less of a comedy, and there was certainly different ideas for who was going to be in the film. And Sigourney, even though she had worked with Ramis on Ghostbusters, was certainly not on his casting list, for the fact that she is probably the archetypal heroine in sci-fi in the form of Ellen Ripley. In my personal opinion, I think it's Ripley and Sarah Connor are the two MVPs there in that respect. Once Weaver was cast in the part, she pushed for a complete switch, that DeMarco was going to be the blonde bombshell. She had, in terms of her costume, breast augmentation, to basically make her look the part of the bimbo. And when you know that this is the same person who took on the Alien Queen, it just doubles down that meta humor so well. So when we see her in that opening retro scene, and she's got the big blonde hair, and she's just repeating the computer back as well, it is ridiculous, and it works so well. The late, great wonderful, brilliant Alan Rickman is an up. So he is playing Alexander Dane, who plays Dr. Lazarus on Galaxy Quest. Dr. Lazarus is, of course, your take on Spock. Lazarus came back from the dead, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3. Alexander Dane, on the other hand, is on the way, like there's Nimoy there, but he is a Shakespearean actor. I mean, there's a lot of Patrick Stewart in there as well. And, you know, the seriousness that he brings to the role and how he performs and how he approaches the material while wearing the floppy fin head is just classic. Alan Rickman plays this as straight as anything, and that's why it works. Although he was a very funny man, this kind of stand-up slapstick comedy, not Alan Rickman's deal. And as the brilliant documentary, by the way, Never Surrender, reminds us, this is pre the role of Snape. I mean, we knew Alan Rickman mostly for period dramas and obviously Die Hard, but we didn't know him from sci-fi or from fantasy, put it that way. So this works so well. At this point in the film as well, don't, for any reason, ask him to use his catchphrase. Tim Allen taken up. So Tim Allen was coming off Home Improvement, which had run for so many seasons and in fact was now at an end. He turned down another season of Home Improvement to do this film. So many people knew him. He was the handyman, obviously. He was, you know, a lot of people, like, they really knew him really well. What they didn't know him from was sci-fi, Buzz Lightyear notwithstanding. Seeing him play this Shatner-esque role was like doubly hilarious. When he arrives, he brings a swagger that is while there is so much arrogance in the role, it's showmanship. He walks a very fine line in this part because it could be really easy to hate a character like Jason Nesmith, and you kind of can't hate him in this film because he plays the role like he's a good person who's just always looking for the next gig, the next party, the next role, not necessarily at the expense of others, although there is of course that discussion about he's now taking on more and more solo appearances. He doesn't seem to be keeping anybody from work as well, and there's a very important moment about, you know, pretty early into the film that shows you what kind of a character this man is. Tony Shalhoub and Daryl Mitchell are both brilliant in their parts as well. They each get like just fantastic moments to shine throughout the film. Daryl Mitchell obviously up Daryl Mitchell, up Tony Shalhoub. I love that he is tasked with playing little Tommy Webber all grown up. Because the people who go to see these actors, they're not going to see the actor, they're going to see the character. Totally random. I just listened to The Princess Diarist that was written by Carrie Fisher, and she spoke about how many times she would be at conventions doing appearances and little children would come up and they would just dissolve into tears because, as she said, they came to see Princess Leia, who was this old woman sitting in front of them. Now, she was laughing as she related these stories. Daryl's Tommy does not look like he finds it very funny. In a way, he kind of is. He's definitely playing the Will Wheaton, Wesley Crusher character, but he's also playing every actor that's gotten older than their character. And it's so funny. And he's so wound up when they're waiting there in the green room, when you have, you know, just, oh, by the way, up to Alan Rickman playing the depressed Dane, this Shakespearean actor. I'll be honest, it's not my original joke. I just, you know, seeing this Shakespearean actor playing the depressed Dane. Yeah, Hamlet, we get it. Anyway, it's funny. But seeing them all there in that green room, Tommy's so angry because Nesmith hasn't bothered his whole to show up yet. You have DeMarco walking around, she's fed up, he's an hour and a half late, but these people clearly have known each other for years. Fred Kwan sitting there is just doing a crossword, he's like da 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 da. Okay, right, we're going to talk about Tony Shalhoub because he's as high as a kite for the whole film. It's never explicitly stated. At one point he is asked, "Are you high?" But it's never said. But Shalhoub played his character that he pretty much always was munching on food or something. He's very chill, very laid back about everything. And of course, it's that because he's stoned out of his mind for the whole film. I mean, think about it this way. He takes being beamed up to the ship pretty well, doesn't he? Tony Shalhoub is of Lebanese descent, who is playing Fred Kwan, who in turn plays Tech Sergeant Chen. There is a gag in his character in that he is effectively the Walter Koenig of the group. Someone who's playing somebody like, you know, Walter Koenig was not a Russian man and was playing the very Russian Pavel Chekhov. And that was the gag of Tony Shalhoub playing Fred Kwan. That idea that, you know, in older shows, they did often make decisions that would not stand up today. For reference, see everything I've ever said about the depiction of the Klingons in the original series. I've just opened myself up to comments there, haven't I? I look forward to reading those particular comments. Again, the green room scene is effectively setting up the feuds between all of these different actors. And if you know anything about the cast of the original series, you will probably know that only one member of the cast, DeForest Kelley, was never actively engaged in a feud with another member of the cast. Quite famously, there are still some feuds going today. It all is definitely directed at Nesmith, but you definitely see the headbutting between Nesmith and Dane, because this is clearly the Shatner-Nimoy rivalry. At one point, you know, Dane is ready to storm out. He's done. He's had enough. He turns around and he shouts at Nesmith, you know, you stole all my best lines. You cut me out of episode 2 entirely. And apocryphally, William Shatner was known to make sure he got the close-ups and was known to make sure he got the best lines. Again, I say apocryphally because I was not there on set. You know, and then some of them have spoken in the meantime that said, that was what being the star was. You went out of your way to get the limelight. And when you don't get that limelight, it stings and it doesn't feel good. And it's done in a very funny way here, but in such a short amount of screen time, you have set up so much that you need to know about these characters. You've set up that it's been years and years and years and they're still doing this. They still turn up. They might be late, they might have other gigs, but they do turn up. And while all of this is happening, poor Guy is still on stage trying to keep the crowd going because they need to get bloody Nesmith ready to get out there on stage and meet the crowd. Just before we leave this scene, I do love the way that Nesmith gets Dane to get back out there. He's like, the show must go on. Listen, I have a few friends that work in theatre. I'm using this line on them. The crew arrive out on stage. Everybody cheers. Nesmith arrives out on stage. Everybody really cheers. He gets a microphone. He does his catchphrase. And the microphone is cut off because they're there for signing. They're not there for their own glory. Up. How it manages to depict this next bit of the convention and the work that goes into them. You know, if you've been following the channel, you know that we've been so lucky to interview some people who have been deeply involved in Star Trek and some for quite a long time as well. A lot of it's very eye-opening because you know that people are working when they're at conventions. You know that. But sometimes, you know, maybe we fail to appreciate, certainly I have failed to appreciate in the past, just how much work goes into conventions, because you don't want to disappoint somebody who has waited a long time to meet you. So it's tiring because you are on the whole time, and you can see it here. Everyone bar one is on the whole time. You've someone who's full of energy because Guy rocks up to the signing table and says, maybe I'll just pop down here beside you and sign a few autographs. This is just after Tommy's starting to thank him. Thanks for that lovely intro. And he's like, yeah, I know I was on the show. Guy. I mean, he was. Dane is not doing his catchphrase. Nope, don't ask him to say it. He's done saying it, he's not doing it again, and do you know what? I do feel for the fans that come up to him, I really do. I feel for him because he's tired, he's fed up, he is a serious actor, and everyone's coming up doing the same thing. By Grabthar's hammer. By Grabthar's hammer. How many times a day does he hear that? He's a bit less than friendly. I will say that. Nesmith, on the other hand, he's living for it. He is acting, if you like, the exact way that you want the actor to be acting once you get to the head of the queue. and they're signing for you. That's what you really want. You want them to be engaged. You want them to be laughing. You want them to be having a good time because you want them to be enjoying it as much as you do. And we see in Nesmith here that, frankly, he is the perfect PR person for the cast of Galaxy Quest. DeMarco actually comments that, yeah, but you can see the love between him and the fans. And that does really stand for something, even, this is said to be 18 years after the show went off the air. He doesn't have that fatigue that Dane has, that even perhaps Tommy has. Or, well, he certainly seems to be slightly more sober, I guess, than Quan does. And it does seem to give energy to the whole group. In Justin Long's cinematic debut, he is the head of a fan group for Galaxy Quest who wants to ask a few questions. In fact, they have a dilemma, a conundrum, if you will. But Nesmith, at this point, asks them to excuse him and just stands up without waiting for any kind of pause. And, you know, yeah, that's... However much it's done with a smile, that is quite rude. He walks over then to DeMarco, who is being asked by a fan if there was ever anything between her and Nesmith, but on the set. DeMarco assures her that no, there never was. Nesmith gets in there with a bit of a, that's your story. And I mean, this whole will they, won't they is just such a huge part of, well, to be honest with you, male-female pairings throughout all of television and film, really. But in Star Trek, you can just imagine a certain red-headed fellow presenter of mine, were they to meet to perhaps, captain and first officer of a certain ship that was lost in the Delta Quadrant going, so, how you getting on? When's this going to happen? Oh, Ellie keeping the pilot light, JC alight. Do you know what? Up to the question, up to the whole thing. DeMarco stands up and walks away. She heads down toward a group of Weaver cosplayers. It's actually, I love this scene where they all stand together. That's really, really cool. Nesmith goes to follow, but he's stopped along the way by the Thermians. They are amazing. I'm not going to, I have to say, like, my impression of them is nowhere near as good as they do themselves. And in fact, I have seen groups of Thermians at the few Star Trek conventions that I've been to, so please keep going, because you're awesome. Our lead Thermian, by the name of Mathazar, played by Enrico Colantori. Now, it was his audition and the speech decision he made during his audition that led to the Thermians' style of speech. Which is also why they don't all sound alike, which is fine. Hilarious. You are only hope. I think they're fantastic. But also, is that Rainn Wilson? Yes, it is. That's Rainn Wilson. Many of you know him as Dwight from The Office. We know him as Harry Harcourt Fenton Mudd from Star Trek Discovery. This was his film debut. And he was going to have a much bigger part in the film, but he was double booked with another production, which is why he's only in the start of the film. But yeah, that's Harry Mudd right there. You also had Missy Pyle and Jed Rees, both of whom have also appeared in Star Trek in some form or another. They're just, yeah. They're based on marionettes from Fireball XL5. You know what I mean? The way that they move. It's fantastic. Sorry, I love the Thermians. They're like, you must come with us. At this stage, they believe it's all real. They think Galaxy Quest is a documentary. They are delighted with their historical documents, which is why they've come to Commander Peter Quincy Taggart to help them in their dealings with Ceres, who's basically trying to kill them all. Well, Nesmith's just like, yeah, that's grand. Yes, that's for that thing tomorrow. Yeah, okay, just make sure there's a limousine and that's fine. Talk to my agent, that's fine. And away he goes and he follows DeMarco. I'll give them this. They're very good at following direction, the Thermians are. There's a whopper of, it is an Easter egg here, but I mean, like, because it's just a sci-fi Easter egg. They're from the Klaatu Nebula. Klaatu, of course, being the alien visitor in The Day the Earth Stood Still, directed by Robert Wise, who directed Star Trek the Motion Picture. And of course, The Day the Earth Stood Still has appeared in Star Trek as well. Most recently, I think it appeared in the pilot episode of Strange New Worlds, entitled Strange New Worlds. We get a fairly key scene here. After DeMarco says to Nesmith, get stuffed, He tries a cheesy line on her. She's like, yeah, but I know who you are, so go away. He goes into the bathroom where we get a scene that is directly inspired by real life. As Nesmith walks in and he sees 3 of those aliens standing at the urinals, this is a real life event where the director Dean Parsot and writer Robert Gordon were discussing having been at a convention and seeing 3 Klingons standing at the urinals like that. And they were like, that has to go in the film. Of course, it was 3 Klingons. You'd think they might take up 6 urinals. Further research is needed. But just the way the scene is set up, that it forces Nesmith into one of the cubicles, that itself is an up. Hearing the 2 little piss ants who come in and start ripping into Nesmith, you can't not feel for him. Because as I said, he might have been maybe a bit full of himself up to this point. But nothing so far has shown any nastiness from Nesmith. So when you're hearing these 2 kids talking about what a washed up actor he is and, you know, how the rest of the crew can't stand him, and here he is charging $15 for an autograph, which by the way is cheap in 2025 at least. You feel from apocryphally, this is based on something that happened to Shatner, but pinch of salt, it is true. For us, we were talking about this because of course it's followed by he's immediately back at his table. He's very downtrodden. He's upset at this point, but he's still signing autographs for people, and it's a lot more perfunctory. And we were thinking, think of the age we currently live in, where you have actors, performers, writers, directors who are exposed via social media to these trolls that will send them hate based on whether they, you know, thoroughly disliked the art that they've put out there. And, you know, they will rip into them. It will be personal. It will be unpleasant. This is back in 1999. And I'm sad to say, I think it's only gotten worse since then. And I do like how they depict just how callous and unfeeling these people are. And, you know, with the anonymity that comes online, you know, we just, you know, if those people happen to be watching this video, we want you to know that, you know, you are small. And it's not just a case of insensitivity. There is no sensitivity here. It's entitlement to the extreme, and it's pathetic, to be honest. We have spoken to people in the past as well, performers on various Star Trek shows, who say that, yeah, that stuff does get through, which I suppose to a certain type of person will only thrill some people. But it's not like these horrid comments just go into the void and they, you know, they never reach people's ears. Yes, they do. And yes, sometimes it does hurt and it's unpleasant. And in 1999, it was depicted in such a short scene so well. Taking that energy and putting it on poor Brandon, who comes up at exactly the wrong moment, not Brandon's fault at all, and asks really specific questions about the inner workings of the Protector, leading to Nesmith's, you know, explosion of, there was no ship, it's just a television show, which seems like more than a passing nod to the famous William Shatner get a life message that was put out there. And, you know, you'd really have to feel for Brandon here, because although he was a little bit over eager, likewise again, nothing nasty in him. Nesmith leaves the convention at this point, and everyone, well, DeMarco particularly, but the whole cast are very surprised by what's just happened. As DeMarco says in a call to Dane later on, and I love the fact that Dane is still in his makeup. Apparently this was on advice of Alan Rickman, who said, you know, his makeup needs to look like something he did himself, and also leave the makeup on, because if he's doing a convention for the full weekend, it's better than just taking it off, which I thought was such a nice little touch. But she said, yes, she's seen Nesmith snap before, but never at a fan. She was worried about him because of that. Their lodging's much more modest than Nesmith's penthouse sort of mansion, which is actually quite a famous mansion, which has turned up in many Hollywood productions. But his is all glass and views, whereas theirs are, well, more normal, if you like. Nesmith, however, for as beautiful as the view in the place is alone, drinking hard liquor, flicking through the channels, watching himself, and you see that melancholy, you know, that time when he felt he was a part of something special, and he ends up drinking himself into basically passing out. But here again, if we are to take it at face value that he is a Shatner type character, whereas everyone else is the rest of the crew, it does show, I mean, let's be real, Shatner, as much as Shatner is Kirk and Kirk is Shatner, at least, in the original series era, he did manage to somewhat break the typecasting. Because, of course, there was TJ Hooker as well, there was his music career, he was a writer as well. He did other things to branch out from Star Trek, even while still appearing in, it was the 90s, okay, generations had come and gone at that point, but he did keep things going for quite some time, whereas some of the other cast were really locked into that typecasting. DeForest Kelley, for example, spoke about how effectively, once he was McCoy for the rest of his life. Leonard Nimoy wrote 2 autobiographies, one being I Am Not Spock, the follow-up being I Am Spock, to clear up that it seems like in I Am Not Spock he was saying, I hate this role. He didn't. But to try and get the message out there that there is a separation between art and artist. And in the visual cues of this scene, I feel like I've gone on about this for 15 minutes, I apologize, but in the visual cues of this scene, you can see the differences. The one who managed to make a bigger monetary career, at least, versus those who didn't. One of my favorite scenes in the film follows up to the Thermians arriving at Nesmith's house. They apologize for this break in protocol. We are so honored to be standing in your presence, as he's ass up looking for a shoe. I love it. The fact that they mention, we secured your limousine. He's like, great, cool, we're on board, let's go. And he's sitting there, he's nursing a hangover, he's sitting in the back of the chair. The all too brief appearance from Rainn Wilson as he explains what's about to happen to Nesmith. Nesmith's like, I am listening, but I'm just gonna close my eyes here. You've got Laliari sitting there, played by Missy Pyle, who hasn't had her translator input yet, so she's right. There is a production down I have here, and it was a decision made by the studios, made by DreamWorks, showing the limousine basically beaming up. And that was because DreamWorks felt, the original script had it that Nesmith would pass out in the car and wake up on the Thermian ship. So it sort of introduced this question of, was it a dream? Was it real or not? Knowing where the film was going, DreamWorks is just like, don't worry about that. Car beams up, it's real, it's all real. And I don't know, it's a bit more of a show don't tell, or a tell don't show. So yeah, I didn't feel it needed that. Also, whopper of a down when we get up there. Although Nesmith is rolling with it, and he thinks he's there for a quick, promotional appearance. He's gonna do a few lines. He's there commenting on, set looks good and everything. Normally it's cardboard, and he's not realizing, of course, what's going on around him. So he gives a little bit of a compliment to the set design, and there's Ceres on the screen. He's like, oh yeah, that looks good. It's all good. Anyway, yeah, give him the left cannon, give him the right cannon, fire both cannons. That's cool. We good. Okay, brilliant. It'd be so rude and dismissive, because let's say it was a promotional appearance. At least discuss what's going on in the scene with the people who are running it. We do get the complete comedy of the goo transporter. That's enough. I like that one. He gets back down to the planet. He lands beside his swimming pool. He's just been to space and back. He has a bit of an understandable bit of a freak out. So away he hurries to find the rest of his crew, who are, oh my god, they're at an opening of a tech company, like it's a shop. Bagrabthas hammer. I have never seen such savings. Up. At this point, it's starting to feel personal between Nesmith and Brandon. I mean, he might as well just pull a gun on him next. Instead, he leaves him with his weak communicator, but he doesn't know that yet. I mean, everything here, kind of goes without saying that, the communicators, the later surface mapper, the wee little disruptor phasers. I mean, it's Star Trek, but it's so lovingly done that it walks that really fine line between taking the piss and doing a loving satire. All that aside, whopper of an up to Nesmith. He goes immediately to get the rest of his crew. That's what he's like, I need you, we need to do this together. And that's the kind of person Nesmith is. There's bits later on, which we're going to talk about in a bit more detail, about the greater scope of the type of people that they are. But for what we were presented with Nesmith doing other appearances without them, but still showing up late, but still showing up to conventions together. He wants his crew together. Now, whether it's his acting troupe at this point, because it's Nesmith as opposed to Taggart, that is a bit I loved in this film. That was definitely an up. Via a wee holo communicator with Laliari. Oh, go on, I'll allow the holo communicator, it's fine. The rest of the crew beam up. Guy, who is there, who has managed to basically get himself in on the appearance circuit. Fair play, man. Beams up. If you look closely at Sigourney Weaver's reaction when they appear in the transporter room after Sam Rockwell has let the most unholy scream out of him, this was apparently unscripted and her jump is very real. A bit like when you see Alan Rickman on the bridge of the Protector, by the way, doing a little hop and a skip. It's because the bridge was on gimbals. They did build it that way. There was actually hopping and bumping going on. I do like that they leave some of this stuff in. And it's just, it's brilliant because, they're sitting there like, what on earth? But you have, well, first of all, sorry, Matt Winston, taken out up there. Lovely to see you, appearing here before appearing as Daniels in Enterprise. Although, with the temporal Cold War, this could be after, this could be during, this could be anything. But the Winstons, Matt and Stan, have a very large connection to this film and to Star Trek as a whole. I mean, Matt Winston's Daniels went on to become such an important character in Discovery as well, the role being taken over by David Cronenberg of all people. Dan Winston, who is, the visionary who created so many amazing effects in Hollywood in his lifetime, did the effects for this film as well. He, obviously in conjunction with ILM, did, a lot of the CGI effects. But for example, Ceres, that's a Stan Winston creation. Just absolutely incredible. And, he says, when you look at Ceres going, there's an early version of the Xindi reptilian. Again, early because this was 2 years before Enterprise. Take that ibuprofen for your back. If you're able to, please don't take anything you're not able to take. Time is meaningless. I've gone on a tangent. Matt Winston's a legend. Anyway, so they've been scanned with all sorts of tentacle-y things and speculums, which is just hilarious. And Nesmith then arrives and says, yeah, isn't this amazing? Hey, this is all real, this is great. And of course the crew is like, what the? Until Fred beams in. And it's just like, that was a hell of a thing. What's wrong with those guys? Every scene that Tony Shalhoub does in this film is perfect. Up. The whole thing, everything, is created because the Thermians believe that Galaxy Quest was a historical document, and so they've recreated it based on these historical documents. There is so much precedent for that in Star Trek. Let's look at the original series. A piece of the action. You have the gangster planet based on a book that was left behind on Sigma Iota 2. You have Patterns of Force, the Nazi planet that was set up by, that one. But much more recent, and obviously post-Galaxy Quest, you have Star Trek Prodigy doing the episode All the World's a Stage, with the Enterprisians building their society based on Ensign Garovik's uniform and shuttle. It's very meta and very wibbly-wobbly. But it's also, and you see it in other mediums as well. For example, Futurama. Kind of a little bit same but different, because they didn't believe a single female lawyer was real, but they were very annoyed when it was cancelled, and then they flew an Omicron Persei. And listen, I kind of love this as a trope. I do. It does set us up for a heartbreaking moment as the episode, I'm calling it an episode now, as the film goes on. But it also sets us doubly up for the NSEA Protector is a beautiful starship design. Absolutely beautiful. And particularly this, as opposed to the retro one we saw in the beginning, this version that we see for the rest of the film, it is gorgeous. The Protector has the registry NTE 3120. NTE standing for Not the Enterprise. I love these kind of jokes. The ship is beautiful, the spaceport is beautiful, and if this isn't directly based after dry dock from Star Trek, I don't know what is. You get such dry dock themes, you get such space dock themes, and then later on, it's like Discovery looked at this and went, well, there's your Archer space dock right there. I've actually got a couple of downs. My first down is a logic down. Why are the Thermians in the spaceport in human form? The ones when the ship is leaving and they're sort of adorning the walls, why are they in human form? That, to me, just seems like, unnecessary. And then the second down is a joke that goes on a little bit too long, and it's the crashing scene. So, yes, you want to have the gag that Tommy Webber is not actually Lieutenant Laredo. He doesn't actually know how to fly the ship at this point. And so, giving the order is all well and good. I love that gag. It's like, at least I'm not the commander. Take us out. Sorry, what? I like the joke, it just goes on a bit too far. But on top of that, it goes on too far. Like, as you can see, as you're looking at it, the ship seems to do a dead straight pan to the side, which means the wing should be ripping through that dry dock, and it appears to be nowhere to be found. So it's just that's just a little down for me. And it goes on too long for me to not ask that question. I do like the overall look of the spaceport though. It's very, the fact that it's built into what seems to be an asteroid. It's got sort of a mushroomish shape, so very evocative of the space dock we all know and love from the Star Trek movies. But also a little bit of a teaser as to what happened to the Thermians' world that we don't know for certain until later on. Dinner scene, great crack. I mean, there's loads of eggs in here. It's an up. He's eating corn-fed Iowa beef. Where's Captain Kirk from? You have poor old Dane who would eat the diet of Dr. Lazarus. I mean, the bugs could be slimy yet satisfying. And that looks like they're walking around with Romulan ale. I just love it. We also get the revelation that the previous commander of the Thermians tried to, negotiate and fight with Ceres. Didn't go well. Anyway, Ceres Prick, played with delicious camp by Robin Sachs under all of the Stan Winston creations. Robin Sachs, by the way, another Star Trek veteran at this point, because he was in the Voyager episode The Void. Funnily enough, I knew the name straight away, not just because of I like to know actors' names, but I've been a Buffy fan for years, and he's Ethan Rayne in Buffy. So yeah, I recognised the name straight away when we were watching this. There is a lot of crossover here. But yeah, he sort of tortured the previous leader of the Thermians to death. So that was fun. They don't particularly, our actor crew, don't particularly want to deal with him. I mean, you have the amount of jokes that Guy has, this is an up by the way, to the fact that he's like, oh, I'm gonna be killed within seconds. I'm gonna die in the opening few minutes. This is my role. This is what I'm supposed to do. Negotiations do not go well with Ceres. Nesmith tries to get DeMarco to turn off the comm so he can insult him. DeMarco doesn't know how to do that. Fair enough. And he hears everything and he starts firing on them. They try to escape through a minefield, which they do. Also, fair play to the Thermians. They built a strong protector because it takes a few knocks flying through that minefield. It does, however, lead to just... So he tells Weber to go turbo. And then we get this communication from Quan, or kind of Chen at this stage. Everyone's falling into their roles really quickly. Hey, they're telling me the generators can't handle much more of this, that we're breaking apart. Just an FYI. Up. They get through the minefield, they get to the other side, and they're able to chill there for a little bit because Ceres hasn't come through the minefield. We get our briefing scene. Dane has a bendy straw in his drink, and that is an up from me. But here we also get the great scene where DeMarco just goes, I have one job in this ship. It's a stupid job, but I'm gonna do it. And I repeat what the computer says. Completely taking the mickey out of, Nichelle Nichols' role as Uhura, which was much faster than that, I know. But perhaps more timely, Denise Crosby's role as Tasha Yar. I mean, when she asked to be let go from her contract in season 1 of The Next Generation, she said they might as well have just got a cardboard cutout over her legs and popped them behind the captain and that would have been what she was playing on The Next Generation. Shatner, in interviews kind of contemporary around the film, says, "Oh, I don't know who that Tim Allen character person was trying to play, but I did recognize the one playing Nichelle." So there's so many nods to those roles in there. In fact, you know what, sorry, bear with me a moment. On the cruise recently, there was one of the nights where a lot of the actors got together and they did a completely hilarious script reading of For the World is Hollow and I've Touched the Sky. And Celia Rose Gooding played Uhura, where she delivered 2 lines and spent the rest of the play sitting on the backstage, really obviously reading a book, as a comment on how Nichelle Nichols was used in the original series. And I thought, absolutely hilarious. So our MacGuffin is that the beryllium sphere has suffered damage and we need a new one. Then, the Thermians are like, you will be able to help us. And we get the first scene of them trying to gently let them know, like, yeah, about those historical documents. I mean, you don't think things like Gilligan's Island, for example. Oh, those poor people. So Gilligan's Island is a joke that has, as time has moved on, because the show is a little bit less relevant today than it was even back then, it was about 30 years old. It was about a group of people who shipwrecked and set up home on an island. It's basically Swiss Family Robinson, which itself is basically Lost in Space. It was a funny gag. Well, the good news is that they do find beryllium down on, I'm just going to call it Goblin Valley Park, because that's where it was filmed in real life, and it looks fantastic. And we were shocked to find that it's never featured in Star Trek. I mean, this is a real location where they take the shuttle down to. The shuttle, which is absolutely, based on the original series shuttle, the Next Generation shuttles, that font on the shuttle, the way that the numbers, that's definitely straight from Star Trek as well. It just looks like it's, put it this way, this is their Vasquez Rocks. They land the shuttle, they go to a mining colony that might be straight from an episode of the original series, and they see what are called in the making of little blue demons. And I'm delighted that Guy is the one that says, they're not good. Have you ever even watched the show? Chris goes, yeah, I wasn't fooled by the Meep either. These are clearly evil. And they are. They rip apart one of their injured ones. I love that. And then we get the line from DeMarco, we gotta get out of here before they kill Guy. Oh. Guy's absolutely convinced he's gonna die because, as he says, I'm not a character with a surname. I'm not making it out of here, which is a joke they recently reused in the Doctor Who episode Lux. They start to come up with a plan as to how to get around these little demons, and Nesmith goes, well, what if we do the plan from episode 81? Guy's like, episode 81? That's the episode I die in! Don't use that one! But however distraught he might be, he has started to notice that as the movie goes on, DeMarco's outfit gets more and more revealing as the movie goes on. He's like, oh my god. Another suggestion by Sigourney Weaver. I love it. As actors, they're trying to say, how we stay in touch? Nesmith has to remind Tommy, these communicators, they work. So he's like, oh yeah. They manage to draw the little demons off and start rolling one of these beryllium spheres back to the shuttle, which goes largely without a hitch until they get back there and they realise that with the sphere, there's not enough room for all of them. There's 2 great gags actually with the shuttle. The first was when they land the shuttle and they just open the back hatch without checking for oxygen or anything, which is, at least accept the fact you're going to check for oxygen. For example, in USS Callister recently, we did the exact same thing. But then when we get back, Nesmith punches Dane to save his life because he shoves him on the shuttle and says, right, fly off without me. And which just leads to the scene where he's dragged back, in the little blue demon speech. They're like, oh, it looks like a child. We should hit it with a rock and then eat it. He does manage to get his shirt off, though. Oh. The entire scene that follows, from the little pig lizard Horta-looking yoke waking Nesmith up the exact same way Daniel Jackson gets waken up in the Stargate movie, to the arrival of the rock monster, finally, the Gorignac. William Shatner was just like, huh, I see you took my idea. It just worked. Also, there's only 10 years between this and The Final Frontier. Technology jumped on a bit in the meantime, didn't it? Fred is up on the ship, and this is his kind of first, I've got to be on the ball here. And he's going to use he's going to use the transporter, right? And so he's like, okay, we're going to test it on the pig lizard thing, and he beams it up, and do you remember that scene in the motion picture? Enterprise, what we got back didn't live long, thankfully. Like the helical torsion of exiting the mycelial plane. Oh God. And that thing looked to be alive for a few minutes. Up, but in a really creeped out kind of way. Saving Nesmith in the nick of time, though, a la Scotty in Trek '09, Fred, proves that he kind of does know what he's doing, technically, him using this technology for the first time. But it's very original series, it's very Star Trek overall. It does lead to the great line from Dane, "I see you managed to take your shirt off." Up. Seeing these kind of scenes that would turn up in Trek later on, it should be as no surprise to anyone that J.J. Abrams has gone on the record saying how much he enjoyed Galaxy Quest, and it was clearly, at least partly, an inspiration behind his set of films as well. We then get an absolutely devastating revelation, which is the Thermians have no need to go home because they are the last of the Thermians. That spaceport looks like it was in the ruins of their planet. Ceres is a prick. Also, I hope he didn't hear me because he's on the ship. Uh-oh. The following scene is, it hits you right where the heart should be. And that is revealing to Mathazar that Galaxy Quest was just entertainment. It was deception. Something that the Thermians don't do. But Ceres and his people do. They have that in common. And poor Mathazar, Enrico just plays the hell out of this. This crushing revelation. He's there being tortured by Ceres, but Ceres forces Nesmith to confess to him. There's a great macro kind of discussion around this, where you see the crew through someone else's eyes. They see the good that they have done. And although, yes, okay, the context of the scene is that, there's like, we have to force you to, it's all fake, whatever. Okay, so that aside for a second. Galaxy Quest has such a massive inspirational impact on the Thermians that they were able to stand up to Ceres and his people as well. Now, they needed some guidance, which is why they brought in the crew. But it inspired them to not just take things lying down and to not just accept things the way that they were. And this is such a wonderful, beautiful comment on the power that, let's get specific, Star Trek has had on the Star Trek community at large, but also the world at large. We were saying, this movie was saying this back in 1999, but it is as relevant today as it was then. For example, recently, the Trek Against Pancreatic Cancer fundraiser. Obviously, we were lucky enough, we got to interview Jonathan Frakes, John Billingsley, and Armin Shimerman on the channel for their part in the Purple Stride. And the charity work that Star Trek actors have done, the original series actors have done so much, the Next Generation actors, everyone from day one through to today. Look at the amount of work that Wilson Cruz has done with GLAAD, for example. And it's sort of seeing that look on Nesmith's face, DeMarco's face, Weber's face, seeing them realize their impact on the Thermians is such a wonderful meta moment in the film. Think about the contributions that they, through their acting, have done to the Thermians. Think about the contributions that Star Trek actors have done to the world. Look, I'm not trying to plug lists here, but we've listed some of the things that Star Trek actors have given to the community at large. This seems like a sort of a meta crux of the film, and I think it's handled really, really well. We set up our Act 3 here. Ceres is going to leave the ship, but before he does, he wants everyone dead. He lets the air out of the room the Thermians are in, and he's going to airlock our crew. Well, they're having none of that. After a really funny fake fight between Nesmith and Dane, where they look like they're turning on each other, but effectively all they do is just trap those other baddies in the airlock and blast them out, which does lead to a great exchange. You used to pull your punches. Scene-stealing hack. Love it. But leads to one of the funniest lines. Fred just standing there, that door is a bit sticky, okay, one of my guys up here with some WD-40. I love how he's just accepted this as life. Oh. We get our separation of crews. Nesmith and DeMarco, they're going to go off to the core and try and shut it down. After, DeMarco goes, computer, shut down the core. Unfortunately, nothing. Dane is going to go and try and free the Thermians. Weber is going to practice his driving. And Fred and Laliari are going to try and get the rest of the invaders off the ship. Guy's there too. Dane teams up with Quellic, played by Patrick Breen, who make a surprisingly affecting double act, because Quellic is obsessed with Dr. Lazarus and has modeled his entire life around Lazarus's teachings. And it's so sweet, because even though we do get one more, don't say the line, you can see how it does affect Dane as well, just to see what he's meant to this alien person. Oh, it's so sweet. Gwen and Jason have to crawl through the ducts. Ducts! Why is it always ducts? I don't know, Ripley, why is it always ducts? DeMarco and Nesmith are on the way to the computer core because they want to shut down the overload, because they don't all want to die. DeMarco, I love the fact she gets the line, well, I don't know how to shut down a reactor core, and I'm pretty sure you don't know how to shut down a reactor core. To which Nesmith says, yes, but I'm pretty sure I know someone who does. Up to the use of the Trek community. I'm just going to say the Trek community, but yes, the Galaxy Quest community in this film, because the vindication of Brandon. We cut back down to Earth, where Brandon is sitting there building his latest model of the NSCA protector. His mom is reminding him that he does have to bring the garbage out. And he's like, I know, but I'm very busy right now, Mum. It walks a very fine line here. And I think this is the strength of Galaxy Quest, because the depiction of Brandon and the other fans could, with a lesser skill, it could be quite mean-spirited. And it doesn't come across as mean-spirited at all in this film. In fact, as speaking as a Star Trek fan myself, very recently, I had family stay over. They described my place as a nerd heaven because I've just got so much stuff everywhere, and I play with it that way. And yet, to many people, I'm probably a big giant weirdo for the amount of things that I keep, and I have models, and I have all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's probably odd to some people, in the way that perhaps Brandon could be odd to some people because he's got models in his room and he takes this stuff seriously. But he's not treated as odd in this film. Galaxy Quest has often been described as, not only is it a playful satire on both Star Trek and the Trek community, George Takei once described it as a chilling documentary on, the culture that exists around it. But which he said in good humor, by the way. And it seems like this where you get that. Brandon and the rest of his group must come together to save the crew of the NSCA Protector, and by extension, the entire Thermian race, which, spoiler alert, they do. And I think it's handled beautifully. It's done tongue-in-cheek, because of course it is, because that's the kind of film it is, but it's done really, really well. As I say, where it walks the fine line is when, Nesmith gets in touch with Brandon, and the first thing Brandon goes like, oh, look, I know, by the way, none of it's real, I know that. To which Nesmith goes, no, it is all real. Brandon's like, I knew it! And again, look, there was the potential for that to be a kind of oh yeah, we all believe that it's real. I would love to believe Star Trek's real, please don't get me wrong, but it does it with good nature. And that's why it's such a whopper of an up for this, for me. Oh, so Brandon's going to then direct them to the core, and we get the Chompers scene. Well, screw that. For as bad as the dubbing is, it's an up. The whole Chekhov's gun, by the way, is the Omega-13 device. That's what Ceres wants. That's why he's been hunting the NSCA Protector, the whole thing. They don't know what it does. It was going to be in the last episode of Galaxy Quest, but sure, then it got lost, didn't it? Brandon reckons that the Omega-13 device is this wonderful creation that can send you back in time 13 seconds. As Nesmith effectively stops, looks at the camera and says, enough time to change one mistake. Fred, after a little bit of, backing up from Laliari and Guy, manages to beam the Rockman into the room where the invaders were. The Rockman then effectively beats them all to death and smashes a whole wall, and they all get blasted out into space. I'm just going to assume the Rockman, who is pretty innocent in all of this, is fine. Fred and Laliari start to have a little bit of a celebration with tentacles arriving from places. And Guy, who is initially a bit supportive, is suddenly like, oh no, that ain't right. Down, you specious glorified extra. Dane and Quellic arrive at the Thermians' barracks where they're all suffocating inside. And we get just that wonderful, lovely exchange where Quellic says, you know, together, by Grabthar's hammer, we can open this door. And Dane doesn't want to say the line, but you can see the eye roll where he just says, fine. Because he sees what it means to Quellic, and he takes heart from that. And he is doing this for Quellic, but also you can see a part of him is doing it for him too. And they manage to open the door a little bit. So many things happening at the same time. Of course, Brandon manages to get Nesmith and DeMarco to the core where, you know, they have to push the big blue button. Was that all? Yeah, why? Oh, it just seems a bit anticlimactic. Brilliant. Love it. Yeah, so they push the button and the countdown is still going. They're like, oh no, Brandon, what do we do? And he's gone. Because in fairness, his mom did say to him, well, you gotta take the garbage out. And then he runs out and he's like, Mom, you've no idea how busy I am. Don't forget to separate the recyclables as well. Ah! Brilliant. It's counting down, they have their moment, and the countdown stops at 1. And as DeMarco says, oh, of course, sure, it always stops at 1. Up. We get then a painful scene. Dane and Quellic manage to open the door, save the Thermians, but Quellic doesn't make it. There is one invader still left outside. He takes a shot, and Quellic just goes, I am shot, and falls to the floor in an homage to Westworld. The scene that follows is an not up that Quellic dies. Sorry, Patrick Breen. But the way they play it. And as has been said before, here, dying in Dane's eyes, Quellic confesses that although they had never met, Quellic looked to him as his father. In that moment, Dane gives him the gift of saying, by Grabthar's hammer, it's my latinum up. I love it. It's pitch perfect. You know, this inspires Dane and the rest of the Thermians to go effectively feral. You know, they take the Protector back. It's a powerful scene. I wasn't expecting it to hit as hard as it did, and it did. But yeah, nailed it. Tommy does indeed fly good. He flies through the minefield, collecting the mines behind him. We get that great standoff then where everyone is now fully in their roles of who they were in Galaxy Quest. Nesmith is in command. Weber, he's flying good. He did it by watching videos of himself. Because of course they built the Protector on watching episodes. So yeah, it's great. So anyway, they collect all these mines behind them through magnetics. They're flying directly at Ceres's ship, which, by the way, Doomsday device, how are you? Kind of a combination of the Doomsday machine and a Romulan warbird. Flying. Ceres goes, I'm a general, I don't blink. To which Nesmith goes like, yeah, but I'm dragging a load of mines behind me. And they fling the mines at them. So obviously, Star Trek since then has gone, that was great, which is why they basically do it in the Discovery episode New Eden, and they also do it more recently in the Star Trek Picard episode No-Win Scenario. Did you just throw an asteroid at them? You're goddamn right. Up. Everything's great, Ceres' ship is destroyed, we all have a great time, and then Ceres is there. He walks onto the bridge, he's got one of those Thermian devices for changing his shape, and then he turns out to start shooting everyone. Oh no! That's not good at all! If only there was some sort of device that could send us back in time 13 seconds. It's good fun actually, it's a good scene. I mean, you know what's coming, but it's still handled well. This leads to one of our great moments, which is Mathazar lamenting the fact that after Nesmith and all leave, they have no commander, to which Nesmith goes, yes you do. Never give up, never surrender. And the bridge separates, by the way. That's also an up. And down the bridge goes. And we get just hilarious scene of Brandon, who is working with the rest of his team, and he's running outside and he's got Roman candles, and his parents are there like, where are you going? Oh, well, you know, as you know, the bridge is kind of collapsing down into the atmosphere at Mark 15, which, as you know, is very unstable. So me and a bunch of the others are going to go and help guide it down with Roman candles. Well, you know, at least he's outside. I'm going to say that's some supportive parenting going on there. That's an up for me. And the fan community saves them because they help the ship come in for a landing. And although there is a version of this scene where it was like really devastating and it crashes into the convention and kills a bunch of people, which I think would be a horrible ending for this film, No, they basically arrive on stage as if they're doing another appearance at a convention. It's absolutely hilarious. Ceres has survived just long enough to be shot by Nesmith, so that's fun too. Hit the introductions on stage as they stumble out the ship. And here's Gwen DeMarco. Oh, okay, here I am, yeah. And another crew member. A guy stumbles out like, hey. And here's Fred and friend as Laliari walks out as well. It's just gas at this point. Everyone cheers. It is a wonderful ending. We have the big theatrical kiss on stage, because of course we do, which leads us into the new updated Galaxy Quest series, where everyone's back, and Guy Fleegman now plays the security officer, and Jane Doe plays Laliari as well. It's just a wonderful, upbeat, happy up as well. And also, funnily enough, that's aged well, because since then, they've effectively been talking about a TV series. And there was pretty serious plans for a while, with the sad passing of Alan Rickman put things on ice for quite a long time. I mean, there was a script and everything, but they keep talking about it. Just a couple of years ago, actually, there was an update that Simon Pegg was now involved in the series too. So you never know. You never know. You never say die. You might even say, never give up, never surrender. DreamWorks were responsible for making this film. In 2006, DreamWorks Pictures was sold to Viacom, which was the parent of Paramount. So basically, Paramount now own Galaxy Quest. So technically, you could see Galaxy Quest crossovers with Star Trek in the future. In the short term, in the game Star Trek Fleet Command, you see things like Gorignac is in Star Trek Fleet Command. And the NSCA Protector, I mean, the design of that ship looks like it inspired ships like, another in Star Trek, but like the Orville, or even the USS Callister. The USS Callister actually really looks like the Protector. But then if you look at some of the 32nd century ships in Star Trek Discovery as well, things like the Courage class look like they were inspired by the Protector. The Eisenberg class, doing away with that, the traditional saucer section, if you will. Galaxy Quest, obviously coming out in 1999, was this entire other property that was inspired by Star Trek and the community around Star Trek. Go more recent and you have that appeared in Futurama, that episode, which is brilliant as well. The Orville is a complete and utter. It's basically its own version of, Galaxy Quest, the TV series. I mean, it looks like things inspired by Star Trek and lampooning Star Trek has become a genre unto itself. What's next? SpongeBob SquarePants? That brings us to the end of Galaxy Quest. Thank you so much everyone who requested this episode. Thank you so much everyone who's watching. Thank you everyone who is liking, sharing, subscribing. That's why we're able to do things like this. It makes such a difference and we really, really appreciate it. We will be back for Star Trek Nemesis for our next episode. Until I see you again, never give up, never surrender. Thanks very much, folks.